Let's finish this up. Yeah, wasn't it? Come back to the podium.
I need it. No, I need the last line to go with it.
Okay, let's have our information item or report on resuscitators and defibrillators at school sites.
Well, here we have Judy Miller and Dr. Charles Newman, who've been waiting patiently, I think, since like February. We started talking about this. But you talk about solar energy being complicated or security. Well, this topic, we all going to have to stay on our toes. So we're ready for it, guys.
I need it right now.
Well, it was requested additional information from our previous presentation on AEDs. In particular, it was asked for some statistics between AEDs versus CPR use, and then also we'll talk about some of the differences between the two as well. So we'll let Judy get started.
And just a real, quick, kind of not refresher, but reminder. An AED is an automated external defibrillator. It's really something that will, creates. It's electrical shock. It takes a irregular rhythm of the heart and basically reboots it. So it's a tech thing, right? It reboots the heart. How does it work? It's basically a computer, and it checks the heart rhythm, and it calculates whether it can help them, whether or not a defibrillation is needed, and if it's necessary, it can deliver that shock. Now, when we talk about resets or reboot and effective rhythm, we need to also understand that it really can only shock for a couple different things: ventricular fibrillation and ventricular tachycardia. Okay, I said it. We've been practicing. He goes,
You're a doctor.
He goes, that one's all yours.
Not that doctor, not that.
So when we talk about why you need an AED, it's really about sudden cardiac arrest. So what is that? It's not a heart attack. There's a distinct distinction between a heart attack and sudden cardiac arrest. It's an abnormality of the heart's electrical system. So that's what we're talking about. And so I thought this was really interesting when you talk about the difference between SCA, sudden cardiac arrest, and a heart attack. So in sudden cardiac arrest, you can see it on, I guess, this everybody's left, right? It's an electrical issue. The heart's not pumping blood. Actually, the person's usually not awake. And so blood's not being pumped, not a good thing. And somebody's unconscious. On a heart attack, it's actually the heart, there's a blocked, there you go. Heart muscle is blocked and the heart can't get oxygen. So totally two different things. The electrical issue here, the other thing is a blockage. What?
Plumbing versus electric.
There you go.
So,
Okay.
so one is expected to know the difference when the heart's inside
No,
somebody.
not at all.
The machine does that.
The machine knows
Okay.
that. So if it wasn't an electrical issue, the AED can't help you. We have a slide that talks about that. So when you talk about CPR versus AED, because that's kind of where we ended up with, okay, what's the effective rate? CPR, it really, in either case, because you don't know if somebody collapses or is having pains or heart problems. You don't. None of us are doctors. And also, I just want a disclaimer that we don't have a medical background, but we did the research. So when somebody collapses, you read the book. That's a disclaimer. But yeah. So really, you never know why somebody collapses or you think they're having a heart attack or whatever. You always start with CPR. That has to be the first thing. And I thought this was a great picture because you're pumping that blood is really to keep the brain alive, right? You want to keep the brain going. You want the oxygen to keep going to the brain. Because even if you brought in an AED later, if you didn't have the CPR going to start with, somebody could be brain dead, but maybe you got their heart started. So it's the brain that you're protecting with the CPR. And then an AED is only electrical, is a device that would get the heart started if there's an electrical problem. So that would be after you start CPR. And here's some statistics.
Okay. So we were able to pull this down that there's a 75% survival rate if AED is used within 3 minutes. And so a lot of this is timing in terms of when you get the AED to the individual. For each minute the defibrillation is delayed, the chance of survival is reduced approximately by 10%. The average response time for first responders is 911. When 911 is called, is 8 to 12 minutes. At that particular time, we're looking at a 20% survival rate. Early defibrillation, along with CPR, is the only way to restore a victim's heart rhythm to a normal rate in a lot of cases of cardiac arrest. This was interesting. Some work that was done. There wasn't a lot of research done out there, but there was some work done by the American Heart Association with public access defibrillators trial in 2003, approximately 21 months, CPR and AED. When they looked at individuals that received that combination, we looked at about a 22% survival rate. CPR alone, 15 out of 103 three victims. Cardiac, in terms of survival rate, we're looking at 14%. So there was a difference when they were used in combination versus CPR used alone. Not a great difference, correct, yes.
And also it's hard because because even with that statistic, it's hard to know who, and here, this is maybe a help too, because when you talk about a victim who is in a cardiac arrest, 60% of them will have those two issues that the AED can actually help with, right? Those are the two electrical issues. So 60% is electrical issue. 40% in AED will not detect any shockable rhythm. And when you split that in half, these are all approximate. Half is because it's there's no electrical activity, and then the other one, the heart's actually stopped. So if the heart is stopped, it could be a blockage, it could be cardiac arrest that has gone too long and the heart stopped. Correct. It has to. Really, it's that. It's the heart. It's the electrical rhythm is either sped up, it's irregular, and there's a problem with that. And so, and when it's going nuts, then the heart can't pump blood correctly. So the AED basically shocks it, it stops it, and then it reboots it. Really, it does. It reboots it. So, in 60% of cardiac arrest victims, typically is what they're saying. An AED could help those two issues. So that's what we need to understand is those two electrical issues primarily that the AED is working on.
Okay. And so this was from the Harvard Medical Journal, and I thought this was a good point kind of to bring this together. AED presents a tough choice. It's theoretically better than CPR because it can restart the heart, whereas CPR is merely a gap in terms of it fills the gap until help comes. One study found that the defibrillator CPR combination improved the survival rate over CPR. We just went over that, but if you run around looking for an AED while neglecting CPR, you could lose life-saving minutes. Bottom line, it's hard to separate the two. Basically, both go together in combination. You have the CPR is typically administered while someone goes and get the AED. 911 is called at that particular time. You use the AED. So that's kind of the combination that's normally used when we look at the research.
And Charles, haven't there, I don't know if there's been studies, but I think there's been studies that show that sometimes when they have an AED on campus, or 5 of them, is that somebody goes to get it. You're right, somebody doesn't start CPR, and sometimes they forget that the best thing to do is say, call 911, go get that, you start CPR. Correct. And sometimes there's not that teamwork approach, or there's not 3 people that are trained to know what to do. Yeah. And because not calling 911 is about the biggest mistake you can make.
And that's why you see up here that if you run around looking for the AED and you neglect CPR, you're losing life-saving minutes because we're not getting the blood flow to the brain at that point.
Yeah, and if you think about it, many people have not even been put in that type of situation, so they're not thinking about all these different things that should happen. So something was bound to get forgotten or neglected somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
And that's really the big issue is it says 90% survival rate if you can get that AED on somebody in 1 minute. But right, so they say you need to try to do it in 3 minutes, but that's a round trip. So if you're here, you need to be able to get the AED, get it back to the person, and not just have it there. It's like get it on them. So those are all I'm not saying it just those are some of the logistics.
So you're saying that if we put AEDs in the school, we'd have to have enough so that anywhere you are on the campus, you would have to be within a minute and a half round each way,
Yeah.
to make it feasible, to really make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
Sorry, I've been asking questions.
so everybody knows that the chances of this happening to a student are slim, very slim, almost none, slim and none. But it can help a student. And with that in mind, obviously, you can do what some school districts are doing, have 5 or 6 devices. And the problem is, you got to remember, you have to keep these devices maintained. You've got to be in the right hands with people who know how to use them. So there's an amazing amount of paperwork and administrative work that needs to be done to keep track of who's been trained. But you already know that you have on the field where it's likely to happen in athletic competition, especially on a football field, on a basketball court, in a soccer game. That tends to be where kids are going to.
And in football games they tend to have a doctor, right?
We have an ambulance there, but what we also do is we have our
Sport trainers.
athletic trainers there. So, but if those athletic trainers had an AED and they were trained, the athletic director was trained, and maybe somebody in the health office, I mean, it would certainly, that might be the way to go. I mean, like I said, if you put them everywhere, and what ends up happening is, or at least what I've been told by other superintendents is, oh, yeah, we did that because some kid died in a neighboring district. And by the way, it happened in Murrieta. So Murrieta's got them everywhere. And, I feel horrible for that parent. Nobody can relate to. I mean, it's got to be a horrible thing to bury a child. But at a middle school, to say that would have been anywhere close to where that student was is very hypothetical. But I understand it becomes a mission for a parent to want to say, I don't want any other parent to suffer through this. And we can all relate to that. So, I don't know, Judy, what do you think about, and Charles, what do you think about that as a kind of a middle place to land, that we're going to have it where it's going to be most likely needed with somebody who knows how to use it? At the same time, we've got...
Well, let me before you go there, I have an opinion. I have to have an opinion. Yeah, everybody has one, right? I've gotten good at certain things, but that's because I do it repeatedly over and over and over, and it becomes natural. Certain things, right? Yeah, and you do it, and you don't know what I'm referring to, but I do, and so
He's talking about throwing the curveball, guys. Okay, the curveball.
and it's just automatic. Well, what it is my kids would jump on me, and I'd go like that and flip them, right? I mean, so you don't understand that, and without even thinking, wrestling moves, right? And so, and you don't even have to think about it. Now, I, taken CPR umpteen times. I went to the Red Cross and took it, and then I became certified to teach it because I wanted to do that, right? But if you don't do it repeatedly, what happens is, I don't care what you got there, you don't know how to use it. It's not like, it doesn't come like second nature. You have to be using it. Doctors get good at what they're doing because they practice and practice. And doctors that are coming from, I noticed from India, okay, because they got all these kinds of issues because of the population. They come down here and they're good because they've seen everything under the sun as far as infirmities and all that. And they're real good because they're well versed in their science, and because they had a lot of practice. And if you have one of these issues happen once in a blue moon, you're not going to be. So I don't care what kind of tool you put in my hand. Okay, how do you operate this thing? I mean, and training and all that. Well, it's about doing it in real life, because you can practice on a doll and all this. And we've all done it, and blowing and doing all that stuff, and those mannequins and all that. I don't know. I'm just thinking, yeah.
How often have you had to administer CPR for real?
One time, and it was too late. And it was way too late,
Well, if I collapse on campus, I hope you have all the equipment there. I mean, I could do that too.
Yeah, but I mean, again, if you have one with an athletic trainer and one in the office, I mean, you're right. The chances are greater that we're going to have a staff member go into cardiac arrest or have a heart attack.
Or a parent on campus.
Or a parent on campus. Or like what we had in the parking lot at Paloma. Now, look, we didn't have an AED there, and we think we saved that guy's life. Nobody has been able to get back to us to follow up on that. Don, did we save his life? No. Okay. But thank God, Don, you were there to pull him out of the vehicle.
Got him to first responders. Got him to
Yeah, you guys did a great job. But so, I mean, you're right. CPR is probably, we've got to have more and more of our staff members trained in CPR. But again, Judy, you were going to then present hopefully an idea to move this forward.
If they wanted to hear something, I was asking for it.
And then Ed shot you down before you.
I know.
I don't like the idea. That's okay. Yeah, I think you know about that.
Yeah, well, I just want you to know there are a lot of school districts. I mean,
It's
Dr.
not-
Good,
it-
you have a lot. You know a lot of school districts that don't have any of these, right?
At this point, it's not required. Is absolutely not required for school districts. I will tell you that CIF is starting a campaign, and mostly for awareness, because a lot of the sudden cardiac arrest, Jonathan's correct, a lot of times it happens more frequently to athletes and to young athletes under 18, under 25. But most of the time it's actually at home. And what they're really trying to do is make sure parents and students, just remember the whole, even like the concussion piece, it's just awareness so people will report things. Now, if you go on the CIF website, there's absolutely times when the first symptom is a kid just dropped dead. But there was probably nothing you could have done for them because they just dropped. But then they've also said there's been students or kids, young people who have died from sudden cardiac arrest, and then when they went back and looked, they had some of the symptoms like fainting and some of the things that would be a risk factor that no one ever noticed, or they didn't put it together. They thought maybe they're just tired. And so CIF is really putting out a big initiative for athletic directors and coaches. They have a form now. I have a copy if you want to see it, that they want parents to read and sign and send and give back. So they're trying to make sure they're putting out more awareness. That's the first thing, is make sure people have awareness. So if you have a kid that's maybe fainted and having some of these dizzy spells and some of these issues, they need to be checked by a doctor, because some of that can be treated if they can notice it ahead of time. So
Judy, I have one question. It's been a few months since we've had the other course. I've forgotten how much each of these costs and how much to maintain per year. Do you remember those figures?
Well, there is about $2,000 to buy them, and then it really depends on which one you buy as far as ongoing maintenance, because the batteries can last a year, last 2 years. Some of them have pads. Some of them don't have pediatric pads. They have these little sensor things. So I honestly don't know on the maintenance, because it really depends on the unit.
But they do have to be maintained.
You have to check them every 30 days. You have to have somebody check them every 30 days. You have to maintain the batteries and the pads. There's some training requirements. There's some notification and posting requirements.
So if you didn't maintain them and somebody goes through something and then somebody says, well, we had this thing and nobody used it, or when they went to use it, are we liable for that?
Yes, we have limited immunity as long as we meet all those criteria.
Okay.
And then when you talk about placement, the correct placement is everywhere on your campus where you can get back to the person within 3 minutes. Well, some districts haven't done that. They've just, and I think there's some districts they'll just have 2 or 3. They don't necessarily cover the whole campus. And I do have to say, like, I know Temecula has a fully implemented program. They have like 6 of them on their high school campuses, but they're also working with one jurisdiction. Fire, and right there, city fire or whatever. I don't know if it's city, but it's one. We have, 2 cities and a county. So they have one jurisdiction. They were partnered with the fire department, so they have a fully implemented program. Most districts do not.
You said you have limited liability as long as all these things are maintained and there are AEDs within 3 minutes round trip. Are we opening ourselves up to even more liability if we only have 2 and it's not within 3 minutes?
Well, certainly we are. I mean, yes.
Somebody's going to sue you no matter what. Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about more liability if we have them and they're not within 3 minutes versus if we didn't have them at all.
Well, and I talked to a nurse from LAUSD, and she was telling me that a lot of times people totally forget you even have them, or the batteries aren't charged. They used to have the nurses ran the whole program, and then 200 nurses were cut, so they put it on the principals who certainly didn't have the time. And right now in their district,
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
You hear that, Dean and Don? And
well, guess what happened?
And they're all
Let them carry
delegating to
around
their
in the
assistant principals.
backpack.
And so that's the other thing. You have to really have the commitment. Who's going to do that and be responsible? So if you're going to go in, you need to do it right. Otherwise, there certainly is. I mean, it's hard because you can't put a dollar on a person's life, but then it's just a convoluted, it's complicated.
Yeah, and remember, Board, too, that a lot of these kinds of injuries or things can happen if a kid, especially on a football field or a soccer field, where they have a chance of hitting heads or real head trauma. I mean, when those kids come off the field now, you have a athletic trainer who can stop the coach from putting that kid back in.
Well,
I mean, they're going to
CIF and Ed Code stop it. It's called return to play, and now they've initiated return to play for sudden cardiac arrest type of symptoms as well as concussion.
I mean, you can do the best you can ultimately, but I mean, the best thing we'd do is if we just didn't have kids come to school or employees come to work, and then we'd have the best situation of all. We would have zero liability, but we wouldn't be educating or giving kids a first-class education. Yeah, and we wouldn't need a superintendent. But I guess we're going to have to turn to the board at this point. I realize you don't need to make a decision tonight, but at some point you're going to need to give us direction because
Well,
Charles and Judy
has
just
something. Do you guys want her to hand out what she's got so we can take a look at it?
This was just the paperwork from CIF that they're asking athletic directors to give to parents.
And I mean, we can do that in English and Spanish regardless, whether we have AEDs or not. It's good for parents to know what the symptoms are, the signals.
And I think that's the first step is the awareness.
Right.
Because a lot of this, and I don't have the exact statistic, I think 6% actually survived outside of a hospital for sudden cardiac arrest when it comes to the young people, because typically it's at home and they're not, I mean, it's terrible, but.
Okay, so, board, do you guys have any ideas on what we want to do going forward? I know we've gotten a lot of information over the last few months.
I think we got good information. I don't really think we need to go forward.
Was everybody else?
Everybody should have CPR.
I feel the same way.
I personally feel the same way as well. It's just,
I think it's unanimous, so.
Yep. we appreciate the information.
But we're going to do a really good job working with our ADs to make sure as many of our coaches and staff members are CPR trained.
Coaches
Coaches have to be, but also that, in the era of cell phones, I mean, tell kids it's okay if you see your teacher looking faint, call 911. I mean, never doubt calling 911. I mean, we just, I have teachers who used to tell me before Brian got to Paloma that they had to call the office first to get permission to call 911. I said, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, whether you had cell phones or not, you call the office, you say, I need a 911 over in room S103. I mean, I expect the staff member on the other end to call 911 and get somebody over there, get campus security, get the nurse, get whomever over there. We're not going to judge. Any of our staff members can make that determination. And if they made a bad call, I mean, let's face it, they were trying to do the best they could. So Brian eliminated that to give Brian credit. Yeah, they said to call Brian. And
also, what are we paying our taxes? What are we paying our taxes for if not to use these services when they're needed as well?
Absolutely. Okay, board, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Newman and Mrs. Miller.
Okay, thank you. And now we go quickly here. Information item, review of resolution number 315 to 16, issuance of not to exceed 42 million general obligation bonds.
Yeah, this is just the first reading of the resolution that we talked about on August 5th. If you want another presentation tonight, Scott's in the audience. He can wing something.
I appreciate you guys being here, but I'm more than happy with you guys staying seated right there. So,
well, in the meantime, though, Dr. Rouse has had a good question that Scott was able to answer, and Dr. Rouse got the information, and so we're the one from the last the June board meeting. No. It was August. I'm losing track. Anyway, I think Dr. Rouse got the information, so great job.
Okay, thank you. Revolving cash report. Still cash in the revolving cash report. And for June and July. Board policies, always a fun read. Series 0,000. Okay, we have an action item on board policies for community relations, Series 1000. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It wasn't supposed to be action?
No. Information.
It's supposed to be information, wasn't it? It says action. So I'm just gonna bypass it then. And
have an AED over for the
closed session if necessary.
Not necessary.
Thank you. Good answer. All right. Okay, action item on board review of student discipline matters, ratification of the agreement of expulsion. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on this one? No? Okay, please vote. Thank you. Reinstatement of student discipline matters. Do I have a motion, please? Don't everybody jump. Don't everybody jump at once. So. Ed and Jose. Okay. Any questions on that? No. Okay. Please vote. All right. Other items by the superintendent?
None.
Thank you. All right. Other items by the Board of Trustees? None. Ms. Twyman? None. Oh, you're going to ruin our chat.
I am going to ruin
Go
it.
ahead.
I wrote a note here that, okay,
You can't read it.
no, I'm impressed, right, with the reports and all that. Now, mind you, Jonathan knows this, I was at a board meeting for 5 hours last night. And so to come over here and hear these reports for another 5 hours. But I was really impressed. They were real well done. And I want to compliment the staff on that. Good information, and just made me real proud of, to be sit on this board, as well as the new hires, the new people, the principal and assistant principal. We got a lot of class acts in this district, so I'm real proud to be part of that. So thank you for doing your job, Jonathan, and of course the cabinet. All right.
All right. Thank you. Nothing from me this month. Okay. Motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second.
Oh, we got Carolyn with a second. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Please vote.
For the record, has anybody ever seen Dean Hauser in a suit? I mean, it's like
Okay. We are adjourned to 8:38.
short sleeve shirt though, Don. You still didn't convince him.
Nobody will ever know it's a short sleeve shirt if you don't make it.
Good job.
Let's get started with CMI right away.
Bye, Dr. Good. Bye, Dr. Good.
Yeah, let's just go see him.
Bye, thank you. Bye, Dr. Good. Oh, join the meeting. I'm enjoying the meeting.
We need your help.
Just ready to jump out of here and go home.
That's okay. Oh, no problem.
You know, Art said he runs his.
Okay. I know. We normally take a break, but we're gonna go right into CMI. So, yeah, get out. No, teasing. Hey, you know what? Stay. We need more people for CMI. All right. If CMI, is everybody in? Still waiting to get on.
Slowly.
Jose's not in. Jose.
As soon as I hit stop, it came back up, of course.
Kevin was jumping out of here.
I know, sorry.
Well, I came earlier than that thinking I was gonna be late and miss the beginning. I think when she walked in, told me I told us.
He said an hour, and I said 3, and we're almost exactly 3 after this.
These are all-nighters.
You should see my agenda.
I took notes on that.
You know, we have a policy where it can't run after 9 o'clock because then we have to come back the next morning. And didn't we make that a policy?
I know you and Mr. Holstrom talked about
9 o'clock and. We're going to, yeah.
There we go.
19 minutes to go.
Log in. Let me ask Gloria if she.
Yeah, and it shows.
Logged in. I never do this.
Okay.
It did before, remember?
Yeah.
It's the same as the log.
Because they're on the East Coast and that's the time change, I guess. I don't.
I spelled that right.
Who knows?
Join meeting. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Lori?
Okay, this meeting called to order at 8:42.
Okay.
All right, invitation to address the Board of Trustees on closed session items. No takers. Do we need closed session at all? Do you guys think we need closed session? Okay. We just keep moving. Okay. Revision and adoption ordering of the agenda. Do I have a motion? Oh, we do have. Oh, for open. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, do I have a motion?
Second?
Okay, please vote. Thank you. Okay, principal's update. Mr. Rhodes.
You have to, yeah. You have to.
Got it. Thank you, sir. 3 minutes. Ooh, wow, that's tough.
Hold the card, right?
Yes, I did. Just quickly, the start of the school year has been an excellent start. I want to share just a couple of positive things and then bring up the WASC results are in. I don't know if you guys got the word. 6th year with a 1-day midterm. That's a beautiful thing.
Yay.
A couple of personnel changes. Obviously, a new assistant principal who's going to have to jump over some hurdles here shortly. A new counselor, and then we are in the process still of closing the loop with 3 teacher openings, which we're going to fill very shortly. Our facilities have been working great. They've been put to the test this last week, and I want to make sure I thank Candace and her team and Art and all those guys that left because they're smart like that. But they've been Johnny on the spot, and I mean that. Wow, Johnny on the spot. So I'm really appreciative of all the help and support that I'm getting. And I told Art the other day that it certainly wasn't like this where I was. So thank you. Avid, our first year of Avid, we're pushing through that. We have some great Avid tutors. We have some great Avid teachers, and we have a groundswell of support behind us in the Avid program. And then because I was told to keep it to 3 minutes, I'm done. I know that breaks your heart.
Thank you, thank you.
While they're here, though, I want to make sure I recognize Mitchell Osborne and Angel Love Barons is here from the CMITA, and then also my assistant principal, Robin Davis, and Mr. Elston Pine. Thank you guys for your efforts so far as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we were talking about it. Maybe Miss Barron should have a spot every single month if she wants to, because since she is the CMITA representative. So
That doesn't mean you have to come.
yeah, you don't have to come, but you wouldn't have to limit yourself to 3 minutes, and you wouldn't have to pull a card. So that So.
Consider it done.
That would be great.
Okay. Okay. Suspension report. That's the information item right there. Invitation to address the Board of Trustees on agendized and non-agendized items. We have 1 taker, Miss Angela Behrens, on facilities issues at CMI.
It's actually about, good evening, Board, Cabinet, Dr. Greenberg. First of all, I'm thrilled to be CMITA president this year, and before you tonight, you're going to be looking at our ratification contract. We're very excited about the movements that we've made forward as a union charter. A couple of things. One thing we would like very much, and I would like to get information from you about how to propose to the board that when we do have board meetings, that CMI maybe on alternate months goes first. This makes it for a very, very long night. Our parents are very, very reluctant to come to our meetings because we don't know when our meeting starts. We can tell them to be here anywhere from 6:30 to 8:30, and you might be here at the beginning of the meeting. You might be waiting for 2 hours. That's kind of unfair when every single meeting, we have to ask that of our students and our parents and our staff members who would also like to join our board members and are not able to do that because we cannot always commit to being here until 9 or 9:30 at night for a board meeting. So if we could ask that and ask how to get that done, that would be great. If there's paperwork, an official request that I need to make to the board, please let me know.
5 or 6 years ago.
She has her time, so
Thank you for that. The other thing I would like to do is I would like to read, this is not necessarily my view and my statement, but this is a statement that is supported by many of my teachers that unfortunately were not able to stay and meet until such a late hour. But this was formulated by several of our members. And it says 60 years ago, the Supreme Court famously declared Brown versus Board of Education that education is a right which must be made available to all on equal terms. Today, as an educator at the California Military Institute, I would like to call to your attention the disparities that persist in access of educational resources at CMI. Specifically, student facilities that are currently inappropriate, unsafe, and not conducive to the 21st century education. The physical spaces where our cadets are educated are important resources that influence their learning and development. Yet many of our classrooms, athletic fields, locker rooms at CMI have fallen into serious disrepair. While conditions have improved in some rooms, older buildings are inadequate and poorly maintained. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems are still most common in disrepair and problematic. If we are truly part of the Paris Union High School District, then our students, your students, must not be consigned to dilapidated, overcrowded classrooms that lack essential basic facilities. We can no longer keep putting Band-Aids on serious issues that need to be resolved. It is time to invest in the cadets and the facilities at California Military Institute. As I said, this is something that is presented by many of our teachers, not necessarily mine as the president, but as the president, it is my job to bring it to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Please vote. Approval of the tentative agreement between CMITA and PUHSD. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any questions? No? Okay, please vote. All right, thank you. Disclosure of collective bargaining agreement between July 2014 and ending June 2016. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Okay, please vote. Thank you. Other items by the superintendent?
Okay, well, two is I concur with Angel Love Barons about the issue of alternating start times. It doesn't take very long to do the CMI meeting, and I think it would show some respect, but I'll wait to hear what your consensus is on that when you speak. But the other item is I'm a little upset, not with you, Angel, but with the teachers at CMI, because that school is not unsafe. We pass Williams Act inspections every single year. What I would say, it's an older school, but really I think some of those people need to go visit Paris High School, or maybe you've seen Paris High School 3 or 4 years ago. Then they'd be really happy there at CMI. The other thing is people need to understand we pass Measure T, but there is no matching funds from the state. And if we got all of the money that we were promised when the state had a program, we'd be able to upgrade and modernize. And I think modernize is a great idea. But I think if Art was here, I know there was a teacher at CMI last year who's no longer there, a great young man, who was having air conditioning issues. He personally came to me, and I worked with Art, and I mean, just like we would any other air conditioning issue in the district. And so I agree it's old, but it's certainly not overcrowded. Oh my goodness, you have less students per class than any other classroom in any other school in the district. So overcrowded, not correct. Not modern, I would agree, but again, it's certainly not lack of will on the part of anybody sitting around this table. We would like to modernize every one of our facilities, including CMI. But as Tom Cruise said, show me the money. There's no money there to do it, and clearly we're going to have to use Band-Aids around the district to keep things operating and working. But, I certainly want you to make sure that they know, yes, not modern, but unsafe. I mean, we've spent lots of money upgrading that field, trying to do what we can. Granted, it's like a 67 Rambler. We're trying to keep it going. But the fact of the matter is, again, we are spending money and making sure the parts for the 67 Rambler are out there and running, and that we don't have students or staff in unsafe conditions. But I realize when you open a school like Heritage, and you're planning for new schools, although we're not building them, that when you're in an older school, I was in a middle school where I was a principal, was built in 1953. When I became principal there in 1986. And, I mean, it was really old, and there were a lot of newer schools in the district. But we are up against a school finance system that doesn't really help us. So, please make sure people know that we care, that we want to help, and if there's a dangerous situation, they need to get in contact with us, because we certainly don't want any of our students in school in an unsafe situation. Yeah, first go to Mr. Rhodes. He'll fight for you. He's like Larry Parker. He'll fight for you. Can you get us $2.1 million? Or billion? I think. Oh no, he got that guy $2.1 million. Yeah. All right.
Thank you. Other items by the Board of Trustees? Dr. Rouse? Mr. Wyman? Ms. Cooley? Mr. Agundes?
I think you were asking for a comment, or maybe, that would be fine. I mean, alternate. I think that's a wonderful idea. Yeah, and it gives them an opportunity, to alternate the meetings.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead and finish it.
Yeah, and so to alternate them or something to give them some more exposure, right?
I would even possibly entertain the idea of them going first anyways, considering how short the CMI meeting is in the first place. I mean, it rarely goes over 15 minutes anyways, so that might be one of our possibilities, is the fact that I know I've seen some CMI students out here for a long time sometimes waiting for their turn. And this would allow all the students to get their reports out, whatever they're going to do, and be done within the first hour and a half or so.
Well, what I would recommend to the board, because we have to publicly agendize meetings, I'd recommend to the board just what you're saying. We start the CMI meeting at 5 o'clock, and we just change the regular board meeting to 5:30. I don't know if you can put 5:15. Yeah, okay, we can put 5:15. So, essentially, if it's after 5:15, you're fine. You just can't start the meeting before the.
Wouldn't we have to start CMI at 4 since our closed session for the regular one would be at 4 o'clock? Or maybe.
We rarely have a closed session for CMI.
I know, but can we have closed session for the regular one, then have CMI, then have the regular one as well? That's my question. Can we sandwich that in CMI in the middle, or after we've opened a closed session for the regular board meeting, do we have to go straight into the regular session for regular board meeting?
You can't interrupt.
That's what I thought. So, and our and our closed session starts at 4, so CMI would have to start close to 4 if we were to keep the same timetable.
Yeah, what I would recommend is if there's a CMI closed session that's needed, what we can do is we can recess the CMI meeting at 5, before 5:30, and then go to the regular board meeting, and then come back, and no, staff wouldn't need to stay because it's closed session, and then we can go back and we can resume the CMI meeting after we've adjourned the regular governing board meeting.
I still think you're missing what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our regular closed session starts at 4, and then at 5 our regular open session starts. We can't sandwich closed session and open session on the regular meeting with CMI in the middle. CMI would have to be before our closed session.
No, I think we could. I think we could.
Lori just said we can't interrupt the meeting.
No, I think what we would do is we would recess the regular board
That's
meeting.
the
at
regular
5,
meeting. Okay, you said recess CMI, so
and then go into the CMI meeting. Do that. If you feel you're going to have a prolonged closed session, then what we can do is finish the board meeting with CMI, recess it, and then come back, do the regular school PUHSD board meeting, then come back and do. If you need
Come up
closed
with a
session.
plan that works.
We
That's
will. I'll work with you.
and that's fine. And I would be perfectly fine with CMI going first. I don't know about them, and we'd have to obviously vote on it. But I'm perfectly fine with CMI going first because I know it's such a short one compared to our normal board meeting.
As long as it
and that
doesn't
way
get
CMI
longer.
doesn't have to be here at 9 o'clock every single time.
So actually, you don't need to vote on it. If there's consensus to move forward, we'll do it that way,
Yeah.
and we'll put the regular board meeting starting at 5:15. And again, if you started at 5:20, you're fine. And then we'll recess closed session. When we come back in, we'll recess the regular governing board meeting, go into the CMI meeting, and we'll worry about if we have a CMI extended closed session at a later date. We don't need to think about that right now.
Okay. Work for it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
That's what we pay you for. So,
And she's really smart.
are you guys happy with that? Okay.
So you can now say, Mr. Rhodes and Ms. Behrens, to all the teachers and staff, everybody, and parents, your board meeting starts at 5 o'clock, and you're starting in front every single time of the Paris Union High School District Board meeting. Now you can just get Governor Brown to put an $8 billion bond measure on the ballot.
It just took you guys unionizing and then coming up to talk to us about it for us to change. That's.
And you'll be on every agenda from now on, whether you're here or not.
Okay. Any other items? Sorry, I kind of jumped on that. Okay. All right. Then motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Okay, please vote. Okay, we are adjourned at 8:59.
No, she doesn't want it. She keeps it here. Yeah, I know. We turned it into a pumpkin.